Okay, good morning, everyone. Yeah, you might have seen my name on the market report, which I hope most of you will have had access to. I'm not going to reproduce that this morning, you're glad to hear, but I'll just talk around a couple of the slides that it will appear in that report and add some new information in as well. So IHS Markit, it was the merger of the IHS Group and Markit Financial Information Company. So we're now a $3.5 billion research company, which is pretty big in that business. So yeah, I prepared two reports this year. One was the overall report on the embedded technology across all form factors, all technologies. And then I did some custom work for Vita, looking more closely at the trends in the Vita market. You'll probably get a lot more out of these slides by going back and looking at some of the detail in it, and I'll be here for the whole 3 days. So if you want to talk to me and explore some of the numbers behind here, I'll be very happy to do so. But this is the overall market, and you can see that VME and VPX holds its head up pretty well within the overall embedded market. So the light gray is 2020, and the blue is 2015 on the bar charts. And you'll see that there's some quite nasty things happening in the market. If you start with XTCA, which is, you're probably aware in the telecoms industry, that whole technology is really collapsing in terms of sales. Why is that? The equipment makers are really going over to a more software-centric approach, and they see XTCA boards as sort of representing everything that's wrong in their march towards this more software-centric approach. So they're using, pretty standard modular boards instead of, the made-to-order dedicated XTCA boards. So vendors, and some of you will be in that business, of course, don't need me to tell you that times have been pretty tough for XTCA. Also, of course, times have been tough for the Vita standard with, the reduction in defense budgets. So 2014 and 2015, you've reported to us that sales have been depressed over that period. Hopefully there's more good news to come on that, but the areas of the embedded technology market that are seeing most growth are standalone boards and computer on modules, and that's really beginning to grow, really. COM in particular because of the growth in IoT, and there's a trend towards miniaturization, and the COM market seems to be able to offer that quite flexibly. Defense is still, quite a big part of the mix, but industrial automation is by far the largest consumer of embedded technology. So the study that I prepared for Vita, just talk a little bit about that. Some of you I'll have spoken to by phone or by email, doing a lot of interviews, collecting questionnaire data, and that's really months of preparation that go into producing a market report such as you'll have seen. I mean, overall, we're seeing that revenues for VME are likely to swap over in favor of VPX, 3U having the largest growth opportunity, as processor technology gets faster and faster and more competent, you can get the same processing capacity into a very small package. So we see the growth coming in 3U. And of course, as equipment manufacturers, want to lay off more of the subsystem production to board manufacturers, so those who are in the systems business are likely to get the benefit of growth in the market. So it's becoming much more of a system sell now. No big surprises here. Defense is, of course, the largest consumer of VITA boards. It's maybe a surprise how much industrial automation is still taking VITA product. And of course, I know a couple of you are talking about railway applications, and it'll be interesting to see what you feel about what the potential growth is in that area. But at the moment, it's still fairly small. There's a little bit in medical and a bit in civil aerospace. But let's focus in on the defense market and see what the trends are there that might drive increased sales. So within the IHS Markit group, you'll probably be familiar with the Janes publication and the website, and it's a great source of information. So that, although it keeps its own brand, is now part of IHS Markit. And they kindly let me have some of these charts that show the progress of the defense budget. Things are looking pretty flat. Actually, 2016 was perhaps the highest year, slightly. And if you look at the bottom two bars, you can see that the spend on procurement and research, development, test and evaluation just sneaks above the rest for 2016. GDP follows the line you can see on the top of the chart, and that is decreasing in the US. The target is to maintain something like 3% of GDP as defense spending. That's a kind of bit of a NATO target as well. Not everybody complies with it. I'm pleased to say the UK does. But you can see as GDP falls, so you need to dig deeper into resource allocation to get the spending up to the same level. So how's the money being spent? You can see in terms of the different platforms there. Mission support includes all the RDT&E that's not allocated to the other segments in the pie chart. But I thought that was quite interesting. I mean, you probably got information like this already, but this is the kind of stuff that Janes reports on and gives insight into, and they do that job very well. What kind of new platforms might be a natural home for VITA products? Hopefully looking at those that are produced in large numbers. So I've picked out some recent information that Janes had produced talking about unmanned vehicles. So UAVs, they're reckoning on 63,000 new UAVs in the next decade. That's a lot of systems. And I think Doug was mentioning, how rich these systems are now in sensor technology. So there's guidance, there's radar, sonar, whatever, or radar in the case of UAVs, weapon systems, GPS, you could go on and on. It's a very rich electronic environment. And, unlike the telecom sector, it's one where you need discrete processing at the point of delivery. So, it's unlikely to need anything other than dedicated electronic board technology. So I don't know, maybe you have views on this, but I think UAVs in the next decade are probably going to be an interesting area to focus in on. Unmanned ground vehicles, I suppose we're more familiar with those in terms of the bomb disposal operations and IED countermeasures. But there's a lot of old stock that needs replacing with the latest sensors. So 30,000 platforms is going to be interesting over the next 10 years. I've got more detail in terms of which countries are going to be buying these, but you can see that in general, Europe and the Middle East, US and Europe and friendly parts of the Middle East are probably taking up about 50%. Sea vehicles, so there's lots of opportunities there, but 2,000 new sea vehicles in the next decade is also going to be an interesting platform. So in summary, defense procurement budget fell in 2012, 2013, remained flat in 2014, and that's really why I think it hurt VITA sales in 2014, 2015, the period of reporting. But more positively, we have had a bit of an increase in 2016. The big question mark is, what will the new administration do in terms of defense spending? Are there going to be significant policy changes? I expect there will. But some of the signals that have been coming out in the period leading up to the inauguration were kind of like pretty challenging statements. I mean, challenging some of the big program manufacturers about their costs. That's going to come back, I'm sure, and that's going to get fed right down the feeding chain until everybody's under pressure on costs. And policy changes in terms of, NATO is obsolete. What does that mean in terms of equipment? There's a lot of NATO equipment. What's going to happen there? I can't even guess. But all I'm pointing to is that there's going to be change, and that has a factor on, a risk factor to the budget, if you like. So unmanned platforms offer a good opportunity. The design wins that we've had in recent years and probably through the coming year are going to generate the revenue that will be recognized from 2018 onwards. And vendors capturing the higher revenue system level business are going to benefit most.